Raise your hand if you've ever kissed the cheek of an old woman. Oh, look at that. My grandma, my grandmummy, my Amish grandma, my grandmummy, she was 66 when I was born in 1957, so she was already an old woman by the time I can remember remembering her. And when we'd go to visit her with my parents, you'd open the door to the kitchen, and then you'd say, "Grandmummy, bishtahim." And then if she heard you, you'd say, "Kumarai, wo is it?" And then you'd say, "Oh, it's Franklin and Ada and the boys." Or if it was by myself, when I got older, I'd say, "It's Franklin's, Daryl." And she'd say, "Come in, come in, come in." And as a small boy, I looked forward to one thing when we were leaving. It was the molasses cookies that she always got for us. The thing I hated was kissing her cheek. For some reason, my dad insisted that all 5 of us boys kissed Grandmummy's cheek. It was thin, it was dry, it was cool. If you kiss parchment paper, I think it would be something similar to that. I tried to slide out the door. I never managed to do it. Fast forward to 1989. Grandmummy had fallen in her Grandmummy house beside Uncle Paul's house. She'd lain there for hours. They had moved her to town to the Pleasant View home. I was living in Pennsylvania, had a family of my own. We'd go home once or twice, 3 times a year. I'd take my family to visit Grandmummy. But by that time, 95, when she was 96, when she was 97, she was starting to lose herself. There'd be days when she would be this small girl trapped in this old, worn-out body, not knowing who she was, where she was, not recognizing anyone, scared and all alone. It was August of that year, 1988. We were in Iowa. My oldest son was 5. We had a little baby boy. My wife and I and our boys went to visit Grandmummy at the home. On that day, she was herself. We didn't stay long because of the boys, but she asked my little son, Jesse, 5 years old, she said, "What do you like to play?" And Jesse said, "I like to play Legos." I don't think Grandmummy knew what Legos were, but she didn't let on. Jesse remembered getting a candy out of her candy jar. We signed her guest book and we left. The next day, Wednesday afternoon, I went back by myself. I really thought it was the last time I was going to see my Grandmummy. But she wasn't herself. She was that scared little girl. It was awful. I wanted to say goodbye to the woman who had loved me, but I couldn't. I went home that night as I was helping my mom clean up the dishes. She said, "Daryl, you really should go back tomorrow morning. You never know. She might be herself. Every day is different." I said, "Mom, I can't do it." The next morning, I put the last bags in the car, and my wife came out of the house with my mom, the farmhouse where I grew up. And I could tell they had something to say, and Mom said, "You need to go back. This could be the last chance." And my wife said, "Go. Doesn't matter if we leave an hour later. You need to go." And I did. And I got there. I walked into the room, and she's sitting there in her bentwood rocker. And she was herself. We laughed. We talked. We talked about how when Frankie's boys, that was us, when we came to visit, it seemed like somehow the mice hauled away extra apple slices that were upstairs in the south window drying to make apple snits. It was us. We talked about how I brought this young woman home my first year in college, came home for Thanksgiving. I brought this beautiful red-haired young woman home from Pennsylvania who had Amish neighbors just down the road in Narvon. We talked about how I hated to kiss her on the cheek when I was a little boy, how I'd try to slide out the door. We talked about those molasses cookies that sometimes were soft if she had just baked and sometimes were hard as rocks if it had been a while. Then it was time to go. And I said, "Grandmummy, I don't think I'll see you again." And she agreed. And then I bent over and hugged her around those worn-out shoulders, kissed her on that dry cheek, said, "I love you. I'll see you in heaven. And I walked out the door. I made it to the car. Back then, you put the key in, open the door, put the key in the ignition, put my seatbelt on, turned on the car, turned the key off, put my head down and wept. Sorrow, yes. Pain, yes. But definitely gratitude. Gratitude that my wife, my mother said, you need to go. It's your last chance. Take it. Gratitude that my grandmummy was my grandmother. Thank you.